From Carrie to Body Double, Brian De Palma is recognized as the master of the psychological thriller, but he's also won over audiences and critics alike with comedies like Wise Guys and action dramas like Scarface. With his new film Raising Cain, he again treats audiences to the nightmare world of the mind, and we are very pleased to have him join us now to talk about that and some other things. Welcome.
Nice to be here.
Let me talk about what is on every article that's written about you. As you know, they're looking and they're saying they want to compare this and look at this and ask about you coming off of Bonfire, The Vanities. Let me at least begin there.
Sure.
There's been a book written about it called what was it?
Devil's Candy.
Devil's Candy by Julie Solomon, who writes for Wall Street Journal. For once, for me, what the hell happened with Bonfire, The Vanities, so that I can then put it in perspective of where you are now with this film and go on and talk about it?
Well, it's almost the classic Hollywood story, and I, who have always felt that I was sort of outside the system and could always make it work for me, just fell completely vulnerable to it, in the sense that I had a movie that had a kind of a large budget. So I thought, well, how am I going to make this big, kind of expansive Bonfire of the Vanities? Yeah. And then I proceeded to try to figure out ways in order to make the characters a little more likable, so you might go to a broader audience. And then I made decisions down the line like that. Consequently, I completely violated the text of the book, basically.
What I admire about you is many things, as you know, but what I especially admire about you is how straightforward you have been in saying exactly what you have said now. So many people will say when they make a movie that's not so good, well, I thought it was pretty good, or it wasn't my fault, it was somebody else's fault.
Right.
You have said, as you just said, I wish I had done it differently.
Well, I made the classic mistake, which is to change the text that I love so much.
Right.
And I changed it to a point that nobody liked it.
Because you wanted to make it more attractive in your mind at that time to a wider audience.
Yeah, you wanted to make the characters a little more likable.
Yeah.
I mean,
because Sherman McCoy, there was nothing likable about Sherman McCoy.
No, Sherman McCoy was an arrogant aristocrat and a very unlikable character.
Hanks was your choice, or was that clearly the director's call, or was that the studio's call?
Always the director's call.
Casting is always the director's call.
I mean, you may think, well, maybe it really should be somebody else, but if you're going to go with this particular vision, and it was my idea as much as anybody's, and I ultimately make the final decision. So you can't say, well, it was the studio, or people were making me do this, or making you do that. And I think what's interesting about the book, in the sense that why Julie was sort of invited in to write about it, because I've been constantly asked questions over the years about, well, did the studio make you do this, or did the studio make you do that? And it was like the reporters were writing about MGM in the 30s and 40s, and they had no sort of contemporary idea of what the system of making movies is like today. And I thought, well, here's a chance to let them see what it's like, for better or for worse.
Clearly, I have done some bad interviews, and I never go into an interview intending to do a bad interview. And you clearly went into this intending to make a terrific film.
Nobody tries to make a bad movie.
When did you know this was not going to turn out good?
I guess basically when we started to preview it, and we sort of got all kinds of negative responses from the audience. And then, of course,
but what? Not before then, when you just watched it alone?
Oh no, no,
in a screening room?
you get into the. You don't think you've made a bad movie, and I will say to this day, this movie, the way I made it, is an interesting movie that I like. It is not Tom Wolfe's Bonfire of the Vanities.
So it's really bad in comparison to what it might have been.
Absolutely.
And in comparison to what the novel was.
It's like reinterpreting a Shakespeare play and setting it all in. The Trump Tower or something. It's a complete different interpretation. The problem is that everybody that wrote about the movie read the book. And consequently, their first perception was, this is ridiculous. It's nothing like the book I liked.
Is it true that Spielberg turned down the opportunity to direct this or not?
I have no idea.
Have you read that?
Okay,
I read that, and they said that the reason he turned it down and others turned it down was because they thought it was impossible to make.
And they were probably right. And I proved it.
Hey.
No.
All right, then, so you make this Bonfire of the Vanities, and except for a few people that love you dearly, not many people like it.
Not even the ones that love me dearly.
Worse, you've got this reporter from the Wall Street Journal who's been walking through this thing as you did it, so you know there's going to be a book as well as a film. So in the end, you see this film and you get all of this review. So what does Brian De Palma do then? What do you do? Where do you go? What do you say? Do you want to hide? Do you want to go away for a year? What do you want to do?
You want to, you know, basically go in bed and pull the covers over your head and not come out as long as possible.
Because David Lean, after Ryan's Daughter, did not make another film for 10 years.
14.
14.
14 years.
You know the story of every bad.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
No, you basically want to hide because, you know, it's like all your instincts seemed wrong. Nothing you did worked out. You get incredible negative reviews and the picture bombs, so the business thinks you're completely hopeless, and you begin to wonder if you know anything anymore.
Yeah. Now, some say that you took this on because you wanted some kind of a respect. I read this somewhere in Hollywood, that you knew that if you made this, it would put you on a certain other level. I mean, you were on a pretty good level anyway, because I read you made a lot of terrific films. Was that part of it? I mean, did you think?
Not really, because, you know, I'd made such mainstream films like The Untouchables.
Sure.
This was, by making Bonfire was a risky thing to do for any director.
Because the book was so popular.
Not so much that, it's a difficult, dark, black satire. And if you make it the way it is, you may make something like The Magnificent Ambersons, which is a great movie, but nobody went to see it.
Did you then decide, after all this came out the way it did, that you had to go back to your own instincts? Did you say, I want to make a small film, I want to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. You have a feeling that, wait a minute, I'm so off base here that I got to go back and do what I really understand. And my wife, Gail Ann Hurd, was very helpful in this because she likes this genre. Right. And basically, by working together, we created basically this very modest thriller.
Now, did you marry her after Bonfire of the Vanities? You made the film?
Yes.
You know, so there's some nice things happened to you after you made this film. You have a new child, is that right?
Absolutely.
Raising Cain, and you moved to Woodside, which is outside of Palo Alto.
Right.
Raising Cain is the new Brian De Palma film. We'll talk about that film now after having explored what is on everybody's mind once they talk to him for the first time since Bonfire of Vanities came out. Raising Cain, we'll talk about that. John Lithgow is in it, a close friend of Brian De Palma's, and we'll talk about that film and about the art and craft of directing when we come back. Brian De Palma's here. Talk to me about acting and actors, and you know, I mentioned to you Dreyfuss, Richard Dreyfuss just here, and you said, gee, there's a really bright actor, and I said, well, you know, do actors have a different kind of intelligence than journalists or directors or whatever?
Yeah, they have kind of an instinctual intelligence. The great thing about actors is they feel things are not right, and sometimes they can't articulate it so that you quite understand what's going on. But I remember once when I was doing Scarface, I mean, I had this scene in this office where Al has to confront one of the drug kingpins, and he was having problems with it. And we'd rehearsed it a lot. And he has to shoot this guy, and there's something about this that didn't work for him. And we went back, we rehearsed it, I couldn't figure it out. And then by the way he was moving, I could see that he didn't have enough space in the set to play the scene. It was as simple as that. But I could see him feeling for something, but I had to figure out what it was.
He couldn't articulate it, or I didn't know how to.
Nobody knew, but he wanted to do something that the space didn't allow him to do. And then we just built the set about 3 times bigger, and then he did this scene brilliantly, where he sort of moves around the table to confront the
And you were telling me that Lithgow, the star of this film, has been a friend of yours for a while.
I saw John doing plays in college.
Yeah.
I mean, he was...
Where in college?
Well, he went to Harvard, but he used to do plays at the McCarter Theater. And I saw him in Princeton do Moliere, you know, when I was 62, 63. And he was amazing. And I recommended him to a director who subsequently put him in a film.
And you said that he has something that DeNiro has, which is what?
The ability to play different characters and physically look different without putting on any makeup. And in Raising Cain, where he plays a whole bunch of different characters, we didn't put any makeup on him at all, except when he plays his own father. And he looks so different by the way he plays the part, which is very unusual in film actors, because you're mostly used to Cary Grant or Burt Lancaster or Richard Gere, where you have a face that says, this is the star, and you're not used to having them look completely different within the characterization of what they're playing.
Set up this scene. I want to talk about Raising Cain a little bit here. What's the film about?
The film is about a child psychologist who gets very obsessed with raising his own child, and to the point where he winds up kidnapping her for all types of strange deeds. John plays this child psychologist, and there are all kinds of other characters that you don't know whether they're real or not because they may be imagined and they may actually.
And I read somewhere this film cost about $11 million. Is that right? Or is
yes,
yeah.
we came in like $1.7 million under budget. Thanks
under
to
budget?
Thanks to my
wife, the
brilliant
producer.
wife.
Yeah. All right. Stan, roll tape. Here is Raising Cain, directed by Brian De Palma, produced. There is the woman there. The actress is Lolita. What's her name?
Davidovich.
The Davidovich, who was
Yes.
in Blaze with Paul Newman,
Yes.
played Blaze Starr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is going back to form for you. Is it easier for you? I mean, do you feel sure there in these kinds of what's the appeal?
Well, the thing is that you make all kinds of different movies, but I always have these kind of mystery and suspense ideas. And this is an idea I had for many years. A friend of mine was a child psychologist, and he had a child, and he quit his job and stayed home to raise the child. And he was going to write a book about it. And I thought, what a strange idea, sort of studying your child. Then you think, well, maybe if I have a little trauma here, I can study how it grows and progresses. And that was the whole basis of where this came from. And Raising Cain is the character that, in fact, was studied and how, in fact, he evolved as he grew older.
Do you have some great dream as a director that you have not yet fulfilled? I mean,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To do what?
Well, we're all great admirers of David Lean because he made, like, the perfect movie. And
Lawrence of Arabia?
But I think Bridge on the River Kwai is really the perfect movie.
Why?
Because he builds all his characters and he sets the political world. He brings them all in conflict, and of course, they're all right is wrong for every one of them. Everyone who thinks he's doing right is absolutely doing wrong. And then he brings all these characters to play out this tragedy in this great physical scene of this blowing this train up on this bridge. It's like the perfect movie.
And terrific actors.
Oh, fabulous. And it says something about the concept of war for Americans, for the English, for the Japanese.
Yeah, life and death, everything.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just like
culture changes, everything.
Everything.
Everything's in there. Lawrence of Arabia had a lot of the same elements too, though.
Yes.
Yeah. The hardest thing for you is finding the right property? I mean, finding something you really want to make?
Well, after you've made like as many movies as I made, and I'm working on like my 22nd now, you want to try to expand your vision as much as you can. You want to use all the things that you've learned. And then you have to have an idea or an emotional thing that stirs you enough to put all this to work. And the problem most of the time is that there's nothing that moves you enough to do it because you've made so many movies and you know all the pitfalls and mistakes. So or it's not something that's going to evolve in a way that's going to be exciting to you.
Where are you the happiest? They used to say about Hitchcock that he was the happiest before the shooting started, that blocking out the shots, and having the script,
the idea.
having it all come together for
him. I'm a visual stylist, so I basically get some incredible visual idea. And in Raising Cain, the interesting idea was that, well, suppose I told a mystery story in an entirely different way. Most mystery stories are going from character to character and getting more information, which works great in books, but, when in movies, you drive up to the bar, get a little information, then you go and talk to the reporter, then you go and talk to the ex-wife, then you go and talk to this and that. And it's basically a lot of scenes of people driving over to places and talking to people, talking like you and I are talking now. This, to me, is kind of boring on the screen. So, like in Raising Cain...
But not on the show.
Yeah, not on the show. We are talking heads. But in Raising Cain, I tried to tell a mystery in which all the information is disclosed through dreams, fantasies, flashbacks. So you don't know if it's real or not until you've sort of seen it from a whole bunch of different points of view. Then you've got to sort of determine whether what happened did happen or was it imagined. And consequently, the audience is working all the time. And it's great because if you watch it with an audience, you see them sort of arguing about it and saying, did that happen? Didn't she do that? Isn't he real? And then they finally get it all put together in the end, which to me makes it very satisfying.
Do you like the editing process? I mean, do you like being in the editing room?
Yes, But see, my movies are so well worked out in advance that it's not like you have to sort of piece it together.
You don't have to save it in the editing room.
No,
Yeah.
no.
It's just really a selection of shots, and you pretty much know what you've got anyway, so that's pretty much...
Well, this has a very complicated structural style in the sense of, you know, there are whole dreams within dreams within dreams, and the audience is constantly being pulled one direction and the other.
To those who say that casting is 75% of a director's work, do you say BS or what?
There's so many things that are so important. Casting is very important. If you have an actor that's not up to the role, you're dead in the water. You know, you cannot cut around to like a bad performance. You basically have to cut it out. So, you know, it's very important. But see, the great things about movies are there's so many things that are important. The script's important, the actors are important, the directors are important, and when you see it all cooking, like in a great film like Lawrence of Arabia or Bridge on the River Kwai, you say, my God, this is what it can be. It can be this big, this wonderful, this vast, this emotional. And most of the time we see like the smallest of things happening.
This is a silly question, but why don't we have more Bridge over the River Kwai? Why don't we have more Lawrence of Arabia? Why don't we have more Casablanca? Why don't we have more Citizen Kane? Why don't we have more...
Well, great movies, I think, are always made when you get a great group of talents, like the Renaissance, together in the same place at the same time. And, you know, we had Sam Spiegel, you had, you know, a great script, you had David Lean, you had all these things that came together at the time and made this great movie. The problem today now, and I was thinking about this a little bit as I was thinking exactly that question. You know, when the old studio system existed, it was interesting. You could get a whole bunch of really great actors because they're all under contract,
right,
and you could say, go over to Soundstage X, you're making Casablanca this week. You know,
and they went because they were under contract.
Now I was thinking, how do you get all those actors together?
You call Mike Ovitz.
You can't get them together because they're too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, I was sort of blessed with something like The Untouchables when I was able to get Costner, who was basically not discovered then, even in a couple of movies, but Sean Connery, Bob De Niro, Andy Garcia. And when you get all those actors together in one movie, wow. It's always great when you got great...
Yeah, but as soon as you say that, I'll tell you the story of Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep, who I admire as much as anybody in the profession, making that film that was just terrible.
Right.
You know? They're two great actors turned out in a movie that didn't work.
Well, that is always possible, but there's nothing better than having your best talent all in the same place at the same time. You know,
did they exceed what you thought was going to happen? Did the combustion, was it synergistic?
Absolutely. I mean, you have Kevin Costner and Bob De Niro going at each other. It's like, that's really exciting. Yeah. You know, it's just great actors rise with great actors to act with. It's like, you're a good interviewer. You're a great interviewer. So you get a good interview when you're dealing with somebody that rises to the occasion. Right. You get a couple of deadheads here, we'll put everybody to sleep.
That's right. Earlier than we want them to go. Thank you. Raising Cain is the film. Brian De Palma is the director. It's good to see you. Good to have you back. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night, former television critic Katie Kelly will talk about her new career, and she's written a book. It talks about her advocacy for American Asian children who were overlooked after the Vietnam War. That and much more tomorrow night. I thank you for joining us tonight for a look at the AIDS conference in Amsterdam and with the director Brian De Palma. See you tomorrow night.